if we have Tanner when he's spoken.
Owen, can you hear us?
I can't see you. Can you see me?
We can't see you.
Start my video. I can't see you. So.
Oh yeah, I'm on.
Hey, Owen.
Hey. There we
Good.
go. I'm super sorry, guys. I apologize. My bad.
Apology accepted. You're on. Perfect.
You're here now.
All right, I'm in my garage here, so it's a mess. Sorry about that.
Well, we have.
Looking good.
We just need Tanner now. Well, we have four. We're good. Okay.
Okay, Lynn, you can start recording.
With that, we'll start the meeting. Call to order. And On our agenda, do we have any public comments?
We first go around and introduce ourselves.
I don't see anyone, so let's introduce ourselves. You can start.
All right, Darren Wise, staff liaison.
Shannon Knight. Ricky Olson.
John Floyd with the planning department.
Mary Baumgartner, city council liaison.
Bob McCarthy, chair.
Oh, we've got.
Owen,
Owen Zentel.
member, okay.
Leo.
Oh, please.
Leo Groner, City Council.
And Adrian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, Adrian Whitty with Tool Design.
Thank you.
Thanks. I sometimes let the formal part of this. All right, so there's no public comment that I'm aware of, and we do have minutes from 2 previous meetings. I've read the meetings, and have you?
Yeah, I looked at it online.
Owen, have you?
Yeah, I did look through it earlier.
So I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes from 6/27/23.
So moved.
Okay,
Yeah.
comments? All in favor?
Yes.
All right. Unanimous. And now I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from July 25th, 2020.
Move again to approve the minutes from July.
Second. Any comments? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Minutes have been approved. Now, the main reason we're here is to have a conversation with you, Adrian, about your proposal for the waterfront project community engagement plan. And without further ado, I think we should start right there.
So I can just give a quick introduction here.
Please.
Just as a reminder, John Floyd with the planning department. Last time I was here, we were here to talk about the working group for the waterfront project. So at that time, we made a recommendation to council about membership. Council has gone ahead and appointed the working group with your recommendations. The 2 council representatives are actually here at the meeting today. Leo Groner and the alternate is Mary Baumgartner. So they are on the working group. And so just as a background update, follow up the last time. But we're here tonight to talk about the public involvement plan, which this is a draft plan that our consultant Tool Design has put together with staff and in collaboration. And I think really I'll turn this over to Adrian to go over this since his firm pulled it together. But so Adrian, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, John. I guess firstly, just to introduce myself in a little bit more detail, I'm Adrian Whitty with Tool Design. I'm a senior engineer and been working in sort of the Portland metro area for about the last 15 years on a variety of different multimodal transportation and land use planning projects. Really excited to be working with you and other stakeholders on the restart of planning for the future of the waterfront. The public involvement plan was included in your meeting packet, so hopefully you've been able to take a look through that, at least skim through that, just to take a look at what's in there. Basically, it outlines the who, the when, and the how that we plan to engage, and how we plan to engage with both the public and stakeholders through this restart of the project. A couple of the key highlights, I guess. We really want to recognise that and respect that this is really a restart of the project, and that there's been a significant amount of work and community engagement that's already been conducted, and particularly most recently a really concerted effort between 2017 and 2019 before the pandemic And there's a lot of like great information that was collected through that, and we really want to reflect that work in our materials, and then really use this public engagement process to validate those themes, but then also build support for the sort of resulting community vision, and really try to gain momentum for revitalizing the waterfront amongst the public, key stakeholder groups, and decision-making groups. You'll see that in the public involvement plan, our activities are sort of broadly directed towards those three groups. And you'll also see that we've phased our engagement approach so that we're returning several times through the project, so that we're checking in to make sure that the things and the products that we're creating are valid and reflective of the community vision, and that we also keep that momentum and that support building throughout the project, so that we can make sure that we get to the finish line with that support. And then I think lastly, just trying to recognize that there really are a lot of different voices that need to be heard, including those that directly engage with the site today, but also those that may not currently engage, but maybe they have in the past, or they could in the future. So we've really tried to provide a variety of ways and means that we're engaging people throughout the project. You'll see as we sort of go through the document, the plan defines our key audiences, and in particular, the primary stakeholders and constituencies that will be engaging. I think it's worth just noting there, I guess, highlighting that the project working group that you all approved in your last meeting, that includes, our key stakeholders, property owners, those sorts of folks, that will really, we really want to use those groups to help guide us through the project. And many of those will have a really important role in the future of the waterfront. So we want to make sure that, one, we're bringing them along, but also that we're taking the time to do deeper engagement with some of those groups on certain topics, particularly the larger property owners. And then also there'll be a technical working group that will have key staff from City of West Linn, but also we'll have representatives from other agencies that we'll be using to help validate the technical aspects of our work. So that could be TriMet, could be ODOT, it could be others in those sorts of realms. As I mentioned, the plan has 3 phases for involvement. I noticed the version that's printed in the minutes doesn't, the little schematic schedule didn't print properly, so I apologize for that. But essentially there's 3 phases. During the first phase, it's really intended that we conduct sort of a very broad community engagement, and we validate the themes and the guidelines that were developed from the previous round of engagement that happened before the pandemic. But we'll also take that opportunity to really dive into some things like asking people things like, how would you like to be able to access the river? What specific uses would you like to see in the waterfront? What sort of urban form do you feel will spur new investment or create, that will celebrate the area's heritage? Those sorts of questions. And you can see from that plan that there's a range of different events, everything from public tabling to presentations to civic groups and neighborhood groups to tours of case study examples like the Vancouver waterfront with your decision makers, just to give them sort of a first-hand view of what is possible. And during the second phase, we'll come back and we'll have more we'll have much more in-depth involvement from those stakeholder groups, because we'll really be starting to refine the vision, and we'll bring that vision, that community vision, back for comment and feedback from the public in that second phase. Our primary tools there will have things like an open house where people can hear the sorts of themes and provide feedback, but we'll also have presentations to different groups and to decision-making bodies, and opportunities for people to provide their comment and feedback. And then lastly, the third phase of the engagement plan is really intended to continue to build that momentum, but also to have to provide an opportunity for people to provide comment and feedback before adoption of the documents. So similarly, there'll be open house opportunities and different presentations to civic groups, decision-making bodies to provide those comments and that feedback. So in a nutshell, that's what the plan includes, and I'm happy to dive into any of the details, but maybe I'll pause there for thoughts and initial questions.
Yeah.
I have a question. In terms, maybe like too fine of a question, but in terms of like getting the community in piece of it and getting them engaged and getting their opinions and input, the open houses and everything sound great. How do you reach the people, like people that maybe aren't that involved in the community? How are you making them aware that they have a voice and that something's going on?
Great question. So there's a number of ways that folks will be able to engage with the project. We'll have both a virtual presence and a physical presence. All the sort of bulk of the information will all essentially live on a project website, but there'll be ways to connect to that, both virtually, but also through tabling events, project flyers, open house boards, where folks can actually get that information and be directed to that website. Now, in terms of like how we get out there, there's a few different ways that we have planned. So in that first initial phase of engagement, there's a real focus on trying to be as broad as we can be. So there'll be opportunities to do some tabling events where there are already community gatherings occurring, but also a more informal process where both us and also staff will have this sort of meeting in a box approach where they can take materials to places such like the grocery store, the coffee shop, have a nice informal discussion, and maybe at the end of that sort of hand over a project flyer or a little business card that has a QR code and directs people to a website if they want more information. And through that website, they'll be able to do things like engage with a virtual map and provide their comments on the actual specific locations, or to provide their input through surveys and things like that. One of the things that we'll do on that website is also gather interest for or gather contact information for an interested parties list, and that'll be a way that we can sort of push out when we've made updates to the project website, for example, or we're doing another round of engagement to get folks involved.
Commissioner Groner, you have a question.
Yes. What is the timeline for this website? I gather
Yeah.
it's not present now.
Sorry, say that last part again.
I gather the website's not up now.
It isn't. There is a sort of been a long sort of placeholder website that the city already has for the project, but what we're planning to do is actually to do a refresh of that, and the website will include, the sort of project background, but also the ways that folks can engage. We're currently developing that and looking to launch that over the next couple of months, depending on the timing of materials for that we want comment on. So I think one thing to really identify here is that there has been a lot of feedback in the past. We want to put that into a sort of a draft community vision so that people have something to react to and respond to. And so our schedule is essentially the timing of once that vision is ready, then we'll have the project website pretty much ready to sort of turn on at that point. So we're expecting over the next couple of months to be working on that vision, and probably in a couple of months' time turn on that website and start the public involvement process.
Okay, before Christmas then, I hope.
Yes. Yeah.
So, question. Go ahead.
I have a question. So will the website allow people of this area, constituents, to make comments, and so you can receive comments and keep track of comments?
Yes, correct. So there'll be a number of ways that folks can do that, but in that first phase, we'll have an online survey that folks can fill out, or a map that people can go in and actually, like if they have a specific location that they have an opportunity or a challenge, that they can go in there and add that comment to the map itself. In sort of the phase 2 and phase 3, we're expecting that we're probably bringing back more like planning documents at that point. So it's probably going to be, again, a survey or some sort of format that folks can provide both specific comments and also general comments on those documents as our feedback. So that's how we'll keep track of those.
Thank you.
So the comments, will those be public or will they just be like going to you and staff and like no one
Yeah.
will be able to see them?
Great question. So one of the features of the website I didn't talk about was we want to create a FAQ section on that website, a frequently asked questions. And the way that we're thinking of running that is that we'll collect comments and questions through these engagement phases. And what we tend to find is that oftentimes there's the same question. You can kind of group them into themes. So what we'll end up doing is sort of, collating those questions that are themed and creating a couple of frequently asked questions that we'll post on the website with their response. So in that way, we're sort of acknowledging the receipt of their comment as well as trying to respond to it in a public way that everyone can sort of take advantage of. If that makes sense.
Not clear to me, Adrian, is that those comments that people make, are they public or not?
The ones on the digital map, people will be able to see other people's comments. Anything that we collect through survey tends to be at least collected on our end. So those ones will have to sort of go through and collate those into like these frequently asked questions. However, we'll be keeping that sort of those individual comments so that one, we have them, and that also if there's if those need to be included as a technical appendix or anything like that in our future documents, they can easily be sort of produced that way.
So let me see if I understand. So folks ask questions, those questions get grouped, and then there are your responses to those questions.
Yes, on the website. Yes.
On the website.
Yeah.
So what's worked for O'Toole? Is it Tool in the past, and what hasn't in terms of engagement, which is the trickier part of your business, I think, in terms of constituents. So
yeah,
talk about that, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a few of the things. Well, I mean, you'll see reflected in our document here what we think works. We don't really want to propose anything that we don't anticipate working. One of the things that we've found over time is that the traditional sort of public open house sort of process isn't necessarily, it doesn't seem to engage folks the way it used to. So these days we're much more inclined to have sort of this repository of place where we can keep project information, collect comments, and try to sort of reach our tentacles out to as many places and people as we can. The way we're doing that in this case is we will try to get to existing events. We'll try to have those sort of informal conversations in places where people gather. But we'll also really lean into our stakeholder groups to engage their networks as well. So both the project working group, who have neighborhood associations, representation on other civic groups, they have networks that we're hoping that they can also engage their groups into the process. And also the technical advisory group also has, there are those sort of government agency partners that can also help push out the messaging. So we feel that, you know, that's the sort of the best way to try and get the message out as far as we can.
Tanner, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. My question was answered in that last part. So thank you, Bob, for asking it. And is it Adrian?
Yes.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and Adrian, thank you for being verbose in your response.
Just as a point of clarity here too, so for like at the bottom of page 6, there's talk about, you know, civic presentations. And so this outreach is a combination of sort of tool staff and city staff reaching out to implement those plans. So we'll be out in places trying to go where the people are, as opposed to asking for people to come to the traditional open houses. I think one example we have in mind, and I've had conversations with the Starbucks staff, is there are places where a lot of people, a very diverse groups of people in the city come. One example is the Starbucks a few hundred feet from here. We could set, we've talked about setting up a table outside to catch people as they come and get their coffee. They probably wouldn't want to stick around for a long conversation, but we could give them a handout with a QR code. They could go to the website, provide feedback. They have a contact name, you know. So we're thinking, you know, or go to neighborhood staff, put in neighborhood associations, Lions Club, things like that. So that's the idea.
So then part of the reaching out is with the working group, they engage their own neighborhood associations.
Correct.
As one of the ways, as well as these outreaches like Starbucks. Or
Do you do any just direct in the mail, like here's your flyer, and just notifying everybody in the community?
With certain projects, we do that, particularly where there's already like particularly residential base. You know, we sort of note that the waterfront is a little bit of an unusual beast in that, you know, there's you know, not a lot of folks living directly there. So it's a little bit different, and you know, feel like that's not necessarily as effective. And we think that perhaps like reaching out, for example, through the neighborhood associations, and also, you know, doing social media blasts, those sorts of things will capture a lot of those folks as well.
I guess I don't understand what the reluctance would. I guess who is the target audience for this community outreach? Is it not the entire West Linn, or is it just that focused group area? Or
no, it is the entire community. And so I guess to that end, it's we feel that this outreach plan actually is intended to reach out further. Whereas, for example, if we were doing a corridor plan along a certain roadway, it might be a little bit more targeted, like towards the residents that live there, because they're going to be so directly impacted. And so we'd probably put a little bit more effort into things like a mail out, yard signs, those sorts of stuff to capture that attention. Here it's a little bit broader. So don't feel that it's as effective in terms of spending our resources, and there's probably better, more cost-effective ways to get the word out.
that makes sense.
When there's an attachment for the waterfront development, and there's a key audiences section there as well. I just wanted to draw attention to that.
Okay.
And I was gonna say, the neighborhood associations do have the ability to do a mailer once a year, and it might be a good idea for them to use their mailer for when the consultants come or whoever staff comes to present on the waterfront to that neighborhood association. Use that time, do a mailer, because it is something that I think a lot of people would be interested in. Be a good way to get more people out to the
good
neighbors.
idea. I have a question for you, Adrian. So talk a little bit about what you're worried about, what your reservations are, what you think is the toughest part of this.
Yeah, well, I think I think the toughest part with projects such as this is the sheer timeline. You know, these projects do go long, and you've all experienced this, you know, in the past with particularly the waterfront. Is that there have been a lot of, you know, efforts to move this along, and there's been various things that have gotten in the way. The most recent one, a pandemic. But so we feel it's really important to have these, like specifically these 3 phases where we're coming back with touch points, so that one, we're not like engaging someone and then they're like, whatever happened to that project? Or you know, there's sort of this loss of momentum. And then 2, we really want to make sure that as we come back, that there's this feedback loop that says, hey, did we capture, this is what we thought we heard last time. This is how we reflected it in the work that we created, and this is our chance to like hear from you whether like that we captured it correctly. So we feel it's really important to make sure that we sort of have those 3 phases to be able to do that. And you know, it's a fairly long project for people's attention spans, so important that we've got that. I think that to us is the biggest challenge.
Woody, I see your hand is up. Did your question get answered?
Yes, it did. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I have another question.
Please.
Okay, so I really like this language here in, sorry, I'll tell everyone it's on the first page, the very last sentence. It says, the strategy finds consensus as reached when more project constituents support than oppose recommendations. And then when most people who do not prefer the recommended solution agree the decision was made for valid and understandable reasons. How are you gauging that? Are you doing that through, again, surveys and stuff like at each step, like initial survey where people stand on these changes, that kind of stuff?
Really great question. So I think this is something that you know, might get a little bit further defined as we go. For example, you know, we may come to that sort of second phase open house with sort of a community vision, a revised community vision, and we might have some ways where we can actually, you know, sort of gauge the response specifically. We have had projects in the past where we might have had, for example, like a voting mechanism, like do you support the community vision or something like that. So, you know, I think it's going to depend as we go through how we measure that, and it might be a little bit different in the public forum versus the stakeholder groups. We definitely want to make sure that as we're engaging the project working group, that we're also, you know, making sure that we're getting their sort of consensus building in that process. And so we'll sort of define that with those groups as we establish them to start to understand what does that look like for those groups as well.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you for this information, Adrian. I'm Barry Baumgartner. I'm on council, so I'm not on the committee, but liaison to it. And I've been observing this particular area for a long time. And I'm interested to see, I see an example has been given of the Vancouver waterfront, which is a pretty specific type of development vision. I'm wondering if there are other, like maybe less built alternate type of developments that are also going to be presented as, you know, kind of a juxtaposition, if you will. And the other question I have that's totally not, it's a separate question, well, sort of separate question, is I know everyone is very eager to engage tribal voices, but I'm interested to know how that happens, because I mean, we're talking about people who have been historically dispossessed of this area and don't maybe live here as much. So, you know, how do we represent the interests of the current community living here, but also honor maybe this idea of, you know, allowing space for previously dispossessed peoples to be able to return and have access to the land in the way they want to? And how do we learn how they want to? Sorry, that's a lot.
No, that's good. Yeah, let me take the first question first. So in terms of other waterfront examples, we will definitely be presenting different types of case studies and precedents, and they'll sort of range in their scale. We actually have a couple of really good partners that we're working with that have a lot of experience in economic development, sort of. And other land use sort of planning. So I think we can draw from them as well as our experience. And the Vancouver waterfront was a specific example of a way that we could get a fairly close access, tour opportunity for decision makers to actually go see something that has materialized in the last few years. But it's by no means the only example that we'll lean on. To your second question, and Darren and John might have equally a response here as well. But we really want to make sure that we're engaging tribal voices through sort of their recognized representative groups. And so the project working group includes Willamette Falls Trust as well. So that's we want to start the conversation there, and then make sure that we're engaging through through those sort of recognized voices, and as well as that, I think as we start to lean into specific engagement with some of those stakeholders, we may start to open some different doors. And sort of that's why we want to have those sort of more detailed conversations, so that we can start to hear or understand if there's a need to do something different to what we're currently doing. So we want to be a little bit adaptable, and just make sure that we're sort of like listening in that space, and then being able to pivot or move if we need to.
Thank you.
Adrian, I was very taken with the first paragraph in your document, where you make a distinction between true involvement and solo and outreach. And I thought it's a really important distinction. True involvement, it seems to me, involves being heard or feeling heard. And that's a tricky bit of business there.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the patterns we notice in this community and others is that policymakers head down a road, and then toward late in the process, they get reservations that come in from the side, where people haven't either expressed them or they haven't felt heard. And so I think this applies to both the tribal voices feeling heard, those individuals, as well as others. I'm wondering what your experience is, or what your thoughts are about how to ensure as best you can that folks who have reservations or concerns are heard, so that they don't come up again 2 months later.
Yeah. And I liked your language there, saying ensure as best you can, and that's really all that we can do, is create a process that we're engaging in a way that is receptive, and that we are hearing those things, and that's also having an honest conversation. I think in our experience, what we have come to learn is that not everyone gets what they want, but people can tend to move on if they feel like they've actually been heard, or maybe they can hear another perspective. So I think there's a few ways that we can actually try to navigate that space. Again, to your point, it doesn't ensure or guarantee that that's going to be successful, or that we may not, you may still hear those voices, but we're going to do the best we can to make sure that there's a sort of open and honest conversation, and that people you know, even if they don't get what they want, they may have been heard, they may have heard other perspectives, that information's out there.
I think this is going to be one of your big challenges.
Yeah, maybe. I have heard that.
Thank you.
West Linn residents are not very open to change, is what we have found. So I think it's going to be a struggle, just getting them to understand things are going to change.
Yeah.
I wanted to piggyback off of what Bob had just asked as well. There's some concerns that I have where people will make requests from that are either maybe not fiscally responsible, or where people are going to be fiscally concerned. And I'm wondering how we'll address those concerns so early on in the process. Do we have some metrics that we might be able to provide? If, say, you know, like we're going to have to tear this part of the quarry down instead, and that's going to be an extra $5 million.
Yeah, and yeah, part of this project is to, you know, make sure that, especially during that sort of phase, what will end up being that sort of phase 3 period, is that will also coincide with our implementation planning. And so I mentioned our partners before. We have partners, Leyland Consulting Group and Mayor Reed. And one of Leyland's strengths is, and I think they've done work in the waterfront and other waterfront communities in Oregon, is being able to really put a practical lens on how this, you know, how the waterfront would actually get material, how the vision would actually materialize, and what that truly means in terms of like an economic lens. So we'll obviously be leaning pretty heavily on them to keep us grounded in that space. And I guess that's where we're starting from in terms of like thinking about those pieces.
Question?
I just want to say, I think this is a really good, detailed plan. Probably one of the best I've seen done. So I'm appreciative of that. I love that everything is showing, like every meeting it's been going to be posted to the website, and everything looks like it's going to be very public. Hopefully it'll be an easy format for people to access, because we all know that city's website right now is very terrible to find any information, and you have to download a PDF for like everything. So hopefully it'll be easy, user friendly. My only thing is make sure it's user friendly.
Yeah, and we've been working with staff to, you know, try and find good examples that meet that criteria exactly. And the website will actually be hosted externally, and we'll link it from the city's website so that we can get, you know, some of the features that you're talking about.
So you have a very complicated piece of property here. This is not, it's not, at least for me and for others I've talked with, an easy piece of property to envision being developed in a way that is exciting. It's just, what do you do with a damn place? And what I'm wondering is, in your process, when do you imagine having history, 2017, 2019, input from constituents and others in various ways that you're going to gather it, and where you will then provide, and working with the working group and so forth, then you'll provide, here's an initial vision of what's possible that could result in some excitement. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering what your thinking is about that, what your timeline is, if you have it.
Yeah. So what we want to do is, I think I mentioned this before, but in a little bit more detail, take what was done previously,
Yep.
and the work was done around that, and turn that into an initial community vision that at least outlines sort of, what the sort of guiding principles are, what we've heard in the past in terms of like the types of uses and activities and things that would excite people in that space. And that initial vision may end up coming back with a couple of different options, and they could range vastly different, or they could be quite similar with some nuance. And then using that sort of next phase of outreach the first phase of outreach to bring those out to the community. And if it is a case where we have multiple sort of ideas that we want to bring out, then that does allow us to sort of play a little bit between those two, and get people's thoughts and opinions on like each of those different visions, and that'll help us sort of take a direction that will then tailor and bring back for that sort of phase 2 engagement. And then once we hear, have we hit the mark on that phase 2, then we move into sort of what does that mean in terms of like policy development, implementation planning, all that sort of stuff. So that's sort of in a nutshell, the vision for how we're moving forward.
Thanks. That's a nice nutshell.
Just as a follow-up point to that, our direction to tool on this has been the vision plan to be highly visual, lots of graphics, less text.
Good.
So one example that we were looking at involved aerial photographs with lots of notations on it, conceptual notations. So people can really help visualize it, because it's a long, we'll call it skinny, but it's a long site with sort of changes in character over the 3 sub areas. So the idea was to make it much more visual based and less text. People tend to get cross-eyed if there's too much text a little bit. So so that's been our direction to Adrian and his team on that.
Go ahead, Linn.
Yeah, following up, I think you bring up a great point. And since I haven't been around since the beginning of this waterfront project back in, you guys say it's been going on for a long time. What was the original push to do this? Is that, I'm curious what if anybody knows.
Aaron and John know.
So how far back are you?
Well, 'cause, I mean, Bob brought up a great point. Like it's really easy to look at that area and go, this is a dump. Why would we want to do anything with it? And so obviously that's not the correct. So
Saying, well, it's a dump, why shouldn't we do something?
Yeah.
So Owen, the most recent efforts revolved around restoring the heart. So it was originally the sort of the heart of West Linn, right around the mill there with the hotel and all of the amenities there. And then council has continually made this a goal and a vision for them for staff to implement some kind of a planning process down there to re-envision what could be possible. And I mean, that's where it's really coming from, right? Back in the 80s, they did the same thing. There was a plan that was put together, but it was never implemented. So it's just another push from our counselors to re-envision this area, see what's possible, and get more access down to the falls and the river, and provide it as a community amenity. It's been cut off for a long time to access the falls and the river from the West Linn side.
thanks for sharing that. I see that. It's interesting how it's such a long stretch, though. I really can see the vision when you talk specifically about that falls and the falls access and the water access. It's a little harder to see the vision once you get into the ponds area and the electrical PGE or whatever and all that stuff. But I see your point, though.
And that's one of the reasons we originally broke it up into subgroups, because each of the three districts are very unique. And some of them may not get any redevelopment or limited redevelopment, and others will get more redevelopment as it's easier to access services, access the properties and such things. So.
Sure.
Any thoughts, questions?
I have a question. In your experience, Adrian, what kind of elements to a project would attract funding from various agencies or entities? For instance, I'm thinking environmental cleanup. Would that attract funding?
That's a really good question, and one that's out of my technical expertise, but is certainly expertise that we have on our project team. So I'm probably not going to be able to give you a great answer on that, unfortunately. But I'll take that question back, and I know that we'll have engagement here shortly with you and others. So remind me about that question at some point, and I'll hopefully have a better answer for you.
Okay, will do. Very good.
Dan or Owen, any other questions? Comments? I, for one, am impressed and appreciate the thoughtfulness of the proposal and also your comments, Adrian. Feels like a good fit for me.
Well, great, thank you, and appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
It's exciting.
I think you picked the right group. You picked the right
Well,
group.
and it was a group of us. but
Feels
yeah.
like a good fit. Have a lot of work to do, but it feels like a good fit.
We're looking forward to the challenge.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, was that?
I mean, just a second. Leo, Counselor,
Oh, you're muted, maybe.
try again.
Yeah, I was wondering when the next feedback would occur.
Could you say that again, please?
Next week.
I was wondering when the next step would occur.
Next steps?
To this group specifically,
Yes.
that's a good question. I think we'll map it out a little bit with staff. Our next steps are to start developing that community vision based on the previous engagement. Have in the background the development of our sort of website and our engagement tools. And Darren and John, maybe there's an opportunity we sort of bring some of that back at some point to this group. But I'll defer to you on how you want to navigate that.
Yeah. I think our next touch point would be with a working group on this.
Okay.
But we can talk about circling back around here in the CCI as well when appropriate. So.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
So will we be able to have updates, maybe not for input, but just like an update?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can come. Yeah, we can come back, provide updates. That's not hard. And either Red and Irving coming up here is on that. So yeah.
Good. Okay, anything else? Adrian, thank you very much. Pleasure.
Great. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad you guys like them. These are pleasure to work with. So yeah, it's been, yeah, there's a lot of back and forth on it. So
If the rest of this group was confident as this guy, I think we got the right. Okay. Worthwhile. Thank you. I think we're in announcements. That to say, Thanks, everyone, for contributing to that letter. Woody, Tanner, brother, thank you for drafting that letter to the council, which I thought made a good start for a very thoughtful, reasonable suggestion, and for everyone to contribute to it so that it was all of our voices.
But while we're on that subject, can we talk about why it was wrong for us to do that?
Why is that?
Because it was a quorum, created a quorum. And
Okay. This is your area of attention and not mine. So Darren.
Okay, yeah, so I was gonna address this under staff announcements, so I'll just get to it right now. So when Lynn and I send the CCI information,
Okay.
you'll notice that we blind copy the CCI. So that eliminates you from all of you from being able to reply all, because as soon as you send an email to everyone, that's technically a meeting. Right, and so,
Okay.
and if you're sending letters around to edit, then you're violating state law because you're creating a meeting without it being noticed and you're making decisions. So if you ever want something to be distributed around for comment, send it through me, and then I will distribute it and have people send it back to me. Because if you all are emailing amongst each other and passing around letters, that's basically a serial meeting, and it has to be noticed.
So I could do it individually.
you could do it individually. It's when
But
the
it's all-
same email goes to everybody. And then so you can send them email out to everybody and everyone can respond to you individually. But if everybody responds, reply all, that's when it becomes a problem.
Okay, so we won't do that again.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. It's best to go through me, or Lynn, and then we can send it to us and we can distribute it to make sure that.
It just makes it difficult to collaborate.
Well, that's part of that's really, the collaboration has to happen in the public eye, and that's part of the whole reason for the rules about serial meetings and all that. And I don't think even having one person send out to everyone to have them then give feedback, if it depends on what you're doing. If you're scheduling a meeting, that's one thing, or scheduling a potluck maybe or something. But if you're contributing to a letter or making a decision or something, collaborating on something, that's probably also a serial meeting, even if it's not a group email to everyone.
Well, let's try to do it a little differently. Let's say you have an issue that you want us to collectively think about. And so you send out, here's something I think we should do to all of us. Please respond individually. So each of us responds individually to you. And that email conversation continues, not all together, but individually. We're trying to put together a letter, for example. And you have an opinion, I have an opinion, Tanner, and so forth. And you take those together and say, I think I have a summary that reflects our agreement. And you then send that out to everyone and say, here's what I've created.
I think it would be a gray area.
Yeah, so
If I needed the attorney to, I can't make that decision.
So that's where then the letter should be put on the next meeting agenda for everyone to review and agree on that letter is going to be sent to.
Yeah, I understand the process. I understand the legal elements of this.
I mean, you could hold an emergency meeting if you needed to. It just has to be noticed. So that's the problem, is that.
And what's the bylaw say about noticing?
I don't know how many days.
I'm not sure, but
the issue.
Go
ahead.
While we're thinking about some of that gray area, so I sent out a Google Doc, for example. What if, I mean, obviously, if 6 of us are in a Google Doc modifying it, that's essentially no different than a mass email, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess I think it's really not set up to have any ad hoc communication besides the emergency meeting.
I mean, I think if you sent it all to Darren, Darren took in all of the edits and then he resent it out, that would be okay though. I think that's why I think it's a gray area. I think
The issue I'm having is not with understanding the implications of a meeting that is noticed. It is the challenge of effectively addressing issues in a timely manner.
right, but so like in that scenario, if we would have done it all to Darren, you would have had Darren send the email out. We all responded, I think this sentence should be changed. Darren did all the edits and changed the sentences and then sent it out and said, can everybody approve this? And everybody sent back to Darren, yes, this is fine. Then that would have been fine. It's us communicating with each other. And even if you do it, technically, I think if you even did it like just you and me, it would have been fine. It's because it created a quorum.
I understand. All right, we'll do it through you.
Yeah, I still think that's,
I think that's
Sort of a
still a
gray
gray area,
area
even if it
too.
goes through Darren.
yeah, because I mean, it really should be in a
In a
meeting.
meeting.
It's not happening in the public eye.
But it would technically be the right way to do it, right? If it wasn't a gray area, that would be the right way to do it.
I'm looking at public process and openness and transparency. I understand all of that. I'm also coming from the experience of business and public settings where how do you get stuff to work and how do you get people to come together to make an agreement and solve problems at a time? There's nothing under meetings that I see for a special meeting or what to call it. These are our bylaws. I don't know that there's anything in there.
Yeah, so the community advisory groups follow the council rules. So whatever the council rules say about a special meeting is what we would follow. And is it
24 hours.
24 hours in advance.
Okay.
But just for the record, clarity, I think it would benefit us to get firm legal advice on this, but I don't, even input on creating a document through Darren is still not probably in compliance with.
Well, I think it's entirely Darren. I'd go through John in that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a tough one because, I mean, that letter is going into the public record. So.
Got it.
It's just
The process
of
creating
it.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, we follow council rules. The next time, I will ask for a and we notice that 24 hours, and then we can have our conversation.
And it'd just be a Zoom meeting.
Fine. Is that okay?
The
All right. What do you think about that, Owen?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think a meeting I would have next time. I think it'd be great having the conversation to talk through the issues. Usually is going to be better than emails and all that stuff.
Thanks. That's what I'll do next time if this comes up, or any of you can do that. All right. What other trouble have we gotten into? Did you have anything else?
I was just going to say, so thanks everyone for being flexible and moving this meeting to last Tuesday so we can make sure that the engagement plan was ready for review. And then on Tuesday, September 5th, council has a meeting and they will be taking on the CCI bylaws change. So you want to be available for that discussion. That's Tuesday, the 5th.
Tuesday.
And that is all I had, but as John said, we will commit, we can come back to the CCI just as any other civic group and give updates and gather feedback at the appropriate times during the waterfront project.
Okay, Mary, do we need to be a part of that conversation on?
Oh, I think it would definitely be important to be present in case there's some engagement, questions or discussion, clarification.
Tanner isn't on any longer. And Vicki, you're not going to be available for September meeting. So it's important that Tanner be there, as well as us.
What's the date? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or 26th.
26th.
And for that meeting, what should our agenda be?
So we do need to come back with the Highway 43 working group. So I will check in with Chris Myers and see if that's going to be ready for your eyes on September 26th. That could be one.
Okay, John, what do you think? Is there something else that we need on the agenda that supports what you're doing?
I would say not next month, no, but if something comes up, we can certainly, I can talk to Darren and we can talk to you. We can figure something out about getting on the agenda.
And depending on what happens with council's meeting next Tuesday, there might be something else to discuss on the agenda. Also, if you're gonna pivot to additional responsibilities.
Yes. Implications. Go ahead.
Where does council stand on the council rules changes? Because that CCI could actually discuss those.
Oh, I think the discussion is still ongoing. I don't know. I don't think we've decided.
So I don't know if it's worth having a conversation on that if next meeting.
I mean, we got a lot of input,
Yeah.
a lot to process.
Since we only discussed it really
Well, let's
in a non-public meeting.
well, let's tentatively put that on the agenda as well. Implications of council rule. Okay. Any implications from the bylaws based on the decisions that the council makes? Highway 42 working group will see, and perhaps a conversation about council rules, decision, and its implications. Okay. Anything you want to add, Owen?
Nope.
Question.
Yes.
Related to community involvement, I think. I have been, it's occurred to me that there is an inconsistency in the standard of reporting from council liaisons back to at meetings from their various liaison roles. And I've suggested that maybe having a standard type of reporting process or form or just the steps so that it's not up to each individual council member to kind of make it up as they go along, because then there won't be a standard. It'll be varied depending on the individual, how detailed they want to be. I've been asked to read the entire minutes into the council reporting, for instance, as one example from an advisory group. So I'm just curious I don't know if this is something CCI wants to take up or has an opinion on, but it might be a topic for your input.
It's a good topic.
It's a very good topic.
Right? That too.
No, I think it's a really good topic.
I guess it would be a standardized reporting or back from advisory.
For the city council members back to.
Yes, so for the council liaison, during the reporting time at our meetings, we often are just kind of, well, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since it's hard for you guys to remember.
Well, and that's
all
part
the
of it,
meetings you
honestly.
guys go to.
It would be great to, have there be a reporting format.
Yeah, so maybe like a form that people.
And maybe if a form is too prescribed, then maybe even just to say there's a process, like after a certain time after a meeting, and I don't want to give people more work to do, so I'm mindful of that. But, you know, following a meeting, one person, or it's agreed upon at the end of the meeting, what do we want to our liaison to report at the next meeting? Kind of even as a synopsis, or maybe there's one particular point that wanted to be brought up at a meeting.
We can make that a standing agenda item also.
Well, I could think of 3 things you could say.
Okay.
One would be, here are my impressions of the group that I met with. Here are the decisions they made. And here is my experience of their effectiveness and where they struggle. Like they don't have enough members, for example. It's kind of, and if you were to say, what would you say about today, for example?
I'd want to steer away from kind of subjectiveness, because that gets back to, that's not really a standard as much as it is an individual council person feels a certain way about a group. And I'm only saying this because I'm kind of a worst case scenario person. So I'm thinking in
Very broke.
I'm thinking of past experiences where I've observed a council liaison has maybe not a positive feeling toward their advisory group. So I don't want to leave it up to a person's, well, I think they're doing a good job, or, well, they didn't seem to get along, or, so I just like to, and the other thing, and I hear what you're saying, and I like that idea, but that honors more what I have observed. I think the council liaisons should be reporting what the advisory group wants reported. So that's why.
And then it could be something that would actually could be put into the record, right? So
Exactly. This is going to be reported at the next meeting. It could even be officially noted so that someone who wasn't at this meeting could look back and say, this is what they're going to report out at the next council meeting from our meeting last week.
So in that sense, then the 4 of us are still here. We could then suggest to you exactly the outline we would like you to report back.
That's what I'm asking for, yes, or talk about that anyway, to see what we think.
And I think something like that synopsis would be a good thing to be put into the beginning of the minutes, so that anybody looking at the minutes can have like a 2-second level of this was in the meeting without having to read the whole minutes, and then see, oh wait, I wanted to know about this, I'll read those minutes.
I mean, exactly.
Or watch the video.
It seems like the council reports is, in my mind anyway, is intended to be a distillation of the meeting, not reading of the minutes.
Right.
But I also don't think it should be the council person's distillation. I think it should be the advisory board's choice of what's distilled from their meeting.
Well, let's try it.
And see.
What would your synopsis be of this meeting, Owen?
I'd have to sit down and write.
It takes a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could finish every meeting with just like, these are the points that we want council to have. Like I would say, discussed.
Yeah.
We had a presentation from about the waterfront from the consultants. You know, we discussed the issues with having serial meetings.
I would be more descriptive in the sense of, we had a long conversation with the consultant for the waterfront project, asked a number of difficult questions, and in general, the committee is satisfied with the choice of the consultant and their process and the answers to the questions. That we decided we would be more cautious about how we had our email exchanges to prevent having a meeting and having a quorum involved. And that our future meeting will depend to some extent on the council's decisions over the next few weeks. That would be my summary.
That's good. That's so fine.
There you go. Actually, I think that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
if we're willing to be honest with them.
Either the last few minutes of the meeting, or you put someone in charge, like the chair or the vice chair, of sending that out after the meeting. I don't know.
All right, I did this one. Who's doing the next one?
But yeah, so we could talk about making a standard process for the CAGs
I like that.
at the next
That's the
meeting.
next.
That's what I'm really interested in, is not just what the CCI is going to report out, but how then all the advisory boards, because something else I have observed about advisory boards that this I think would help mitigate is a sense of purpose sometimes, and what are we doing, and does council even know what we're doing, and so we need to make sure that there's connection between the purpose of the CAGs and the council's ability then to move on what the CAGs are doing.
And then even if there was no council liaison there, they could at least still get a report of what.
Exactly.
Would you include synopsis on our agenda?
Got it right here, yep.
So if we have ideas, so if I have, because I'm not going to be here, I can send them to you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, you okay with that, Owen?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic.
Okay. So, and so if you would, maybe talk to the council and see if they agree to that, and maybe we could see if other committees would also be willing to do a synopsis at the end of their meeting, which could be painful as well. We're stuck. We don't have enough members or
Having quorum issues.
or quorum issues
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yep.
Fine with that.
Okay.
Okay. Any last word for the good of the order? All right, with that, meetings.
Thanks, Owen.
Thank you, Owen.
Yep.
Really appreciate you, man. Glad you're here.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Great.